JavaScript was initially designed to be run in the browser to manipulate the HTML documents or the HTML pages that we saw in the browser. Document represents any web page in the browser. So I have a browser open and the web page that is open in it is referred to as a document. The document object model or DOM defines the logical structure of documents. So the logical structure of that web page and the way that document and its components can be accessed and manipulated. So the DOM provides us with an interface or a method to be able to access and manipulate the elements of the document. One of the most common things used and something that we will start with is getElementById. So what does getElementById do? It returns an element object representing the element whose ID matches the specified ID. So given the ID, it will return me that element. Ideally in a page, we should keep the element IDs as unique. So getElementById should match that and return it. If multiple elements have the same ID, it returns the first element matched. Once we have the element, another thing that we use fairly often is innerHTML. InnerHTML is the property of an element and it is used to get or set the HTML markup contained within the element. So let us see a few examples where we will manipulate the DOM using getElementById and innerHTML. Let us say we have this HTML page and if I run it in the browser, this is what it shows. So it shows a seller, the total sale of the seller and a couple of buttons, add one to sale and add two to sale. So what is our objective? Our objective is first to get the name of the seller and the total sale quantity. So here we have, if we can see, we have the seller, the ID of in this H3 is name1. So let us use that. So in the script, I can say let element, or let's call it name element, is equal to document dot get element by ID, and let me specify the ID. What is the ID in this case? Name1. So now what it will do, from this document it will get me this element and I can just do a console.log name element. Now if I do that and run it, what do I get? So you can see I have gotten this element which is exactly this H3 ID, name is equal to name1, seller is equal to Jack Smith. I've gotten this element that I have. Similarly, what can I do? I can do it from the sale. I can say let sale element is equal to document dot get element by ID sale1, and I can just do a console.log sale element. Now if I run it, what do I get? I get the sale element. So the whole element from here to here, this is the element which matched sale1, I get it. If we give a name which does not match, if I say sale1 to, what do I get? I get a null. So if it does not match, it will return a null. So similarly, I can get the quantity. So let us say let is equal to document dot get element by ID, and what is the ID? QTY, and I can do a console.log, and now when I run it, I get the third element also. Now what is my objective? My objective is that when this button is clicked, one should be added to the sale. So let me here say define on click is equal to, when this button is clicked, I want a function to be called which is add sale1. We are adding 1 to sale, so let me call it add sale1. So now I'll need to define a function which will get called. So I can call here function add sale1, And what do we want to do in this function? In this function, I want to add 1 to this cell. So if it was 12, it should become 13 and so on. So the first thing I will need to do is get this 12. So I can say let qtyle, or let me call it element, is equal to document dot get element by id. Now I have gotten the element. Now if I want its value 12, so I can get it, I can say let le, or let's say let quantity is equal to le dot inner html, and let me just do a console.log quantity. So now let's refresh it and run it. Now when I click on add 1 to cell, this is the function which has been called because that's the mapping I defined. There I got the element by id and it gave me 12 as a, I got its inner HTML. Inner HTML will return all the HTML associated with this, which is what I got here as 12. Once I have gotten it, what should I do? I will, because this is a string, I will convert it into a number. So now quantity is a number, and I can say le dot inner HTML is equal to quantity plus 1. So I want to change that to 13. So quantity plus 1, and now I have set it. Now if I run it, what happens? It is 12 and now it has become 13. If it was 13, it's become 14, and every time I'm clicking on it, the cell is getting added. When I click on add 2 to cell, nothing is happening. Why? Because on this button click, I have not associated a function. So I can also say on click is equal to add cell 2. So I'll need to define another function. I'm adding to the cell. So let me parameterize it. Let me call this add cell as the function and pass the quantity. So now I will get this parameter here in this function. So in the quantity, I can just add amount. Now if I refresh and run it, what do I get? When I add 2 to cell, add cell is not defined. I am getting an error at line number 12. Line number 12 is this where I clicked it. Why? Because my function name, I forgot to change it. It should be add cell. Now let me refresh it. And now when I run it, I get 14, 16. If I add 1, I get 1 being added to the cell. So what did we do here? We found an element using getElementById. We got some data out from it using inner HTML and set the data back. The other thing we did was on the button click, we associated a JavaScript function and called that function was called whenever that button was clicked, and that helped us handle the interaction. Let us now do a few problems. Show the name, email and mobile of the person whose button was clicked. So here we have an HTML, and if I run it, I get these 4 buttons: Jack, Bob, Mary and Clear. And what we want to do is that we have been given this data of persons. We want to show the name, email and mobile of the person whose name was clicked, or clear it if clear was clicked. So we have these 4 buttons. So let us first associate a function with it. So I can say on click and let's say show. So I can pass a parameter Jack. Now Jack is the 0th ID here. So I can pass say 0 here, so that I know Jack has been clicked. Similarly for Bob, on click, what can I say? And pass a parameter 1 and pass a parameter 2. And for button, what clear can we say? So I can say on click, maybe let's call a function clear data. when this is called. So now we need to define these functions. So let's go to the script and define it. And here for simplicity, we are defining this code in our script. We could have defined it in a separate file like separation of concerns, but typically we are doing smaller work. So right now it's more easy for us to visualize and do it. As the code becomes larger, we can move it to different files. So let me first define the function show. It takes the index as a parameter, which is the index of the person. And what do we need to show? We need to show the name, email, and where do we want to show it? We want to show it in this div, which has an ID data. So I can say let person is equal to person's index. That is the person we want to show. Then we can say let element is equal to document dot get element by id. And what is our id? The id here was data, so that is what I'll use here. So now we have gotten the element. Now we need to create the inner HTML. So let's go ahead and create the inner HTML. So let me say let str is equal to. Now in this we want to create it. So let me say h3 tag, and within the h3 tag I want to show the name plus person dot name plus h3 closed. So within this h3 tag I have shown the name. Similarly, I can say str plus equal to, and I can show person dot email, and I can say plus equal to person dot mobile. So this is what we want to show within this. So now that we have constructed the HTML, I will just do a console.log str so that I can check the inner HTML that we have created, and I will go ahead and assign it. So I would now say element dot inner HTML is equal to str. Let's save it and run it. So now when I click on Jack, I get Jack, the email and the number, and this is the inner HTML we created. We have printed it on the console. If I click on Bob, it shows me the details of Bob. If I click on Mary, it shows me the details of Mary, and so on. Now we also need to implement this function clear data, because on clear nothing is happening and it's giving us this error, clear data is not defined. So let us now define the function clear data. It does not take any parameter here. So what should this function do? I can get the same element, let element is equal to document dot get element by id data, and in this case what do we want? I will just give it an empty string in the element dot inner HTML. So now anything that was set within it will become empty. It's an empty string, so it should go away. Let's test. Let me save it and test it. So we were showing Jack, yes, Bob is fine, Mary is fine. Now if I clear it, it has become cleared. So this is exactly we wanted. I can test it as many times as I want. So what did we do here? On this function call, in the inner HTML, we were able to set it. So we were able to manipulate the DOM. So this is how we are manipulating the DOM and adding more functionality to the page. So the page is now becoming very, very responsive. It is responding to our events and we can handle them. Let us look at the next exercise. Given an array of names, show the names in an unordered list. So here we have an array of names, and when we click on this button show names, we would want to show these names, and when we click on this button hide names, we would want to hide these names. So we can see these two functions that we have said on this button click, show names and hide names. Let's go ahead and implement them. So function show names, it does not take any parameter, and it will show these names in an unordered list. So we need to create an unordered list. So I can say names dot map function le, each element of this array, and what do we can, or I can say function, say for example name. Each name, what can we return? We want to create a unordered list, so it will come within an li. So I can say li plus name plus slash li. So now this will generate a map, and let's call it const names map. Let me just do a console.log names map and run it. So now this has generated this map. Now I want to generate an unordered list, so this should come with a UL before and after. So which is what we will do. So what we will do, I can say let str is equal to, I need a UL in front, plus names map dot join with an empty string, so no separator, plus a closing UL. So now I've generated the HTML for the unordered list. Now I can set it, so I'll need to get the element. So I can say let element is equal to document dot get element by id, and which element do we want to get? In list names, that is where we want to show it. So let me say list names, and element dot inner HTML is equal to str. Let's go ahead and run it. And now when I click on show names, we can see this has been generated. I can also go to the elements now and check it. So if I go to the elements now, let me first rerun it. So initially this was my div ID that we had, list names. Now when I click on show names, you can see in this list we have gotten exactly what we put in. So all the names are coming in a list. Similarly, if we wanted to implement hide names, so function hide names. Now what should function hide names do? Again, for that inner HTML we can set it for that ID. What should be the inner HTML? It will be an empty string. If we set it to an empty string, it should not show any names. Let's run it. Show names, hide names will. So we have been able to implement show names and hide names. What does it say next? Sort the names in ascending or descending order depending on the button clicked. So now in this code we have just added two more buttons, ascending order and descending order, and what we want is that when ascending order is clicked, the names are shown in ascending order. When descending order is clicked, the names are shown in descending order. So we have these two functions, sort ascending and sort descending, being called on these buttons. So let's go ahead and implement them. So function sort ascending. So once we have this, what should we do? We need to do names dot sort, and let's say give it the function sort names ascending. This will sort the names in ascending order, and say we have sorted these names, then what do we need to do? We just need to show them. So if I show them again, it will show it there. So now let me implement this function sort names ascending, and it will take two names, name1 comma name2 as parameter, and I want ascending, so I can just say return name1 dot locale compare name2. Let's test it. So I had my show names. Now if I click on ascending order, I can see it's become ascending order. Anna, Matthews, Ed, Julia. So it's coming in ascending order. If I click on show names again, now I don't get that previous array. Why? Because it sorted it in place. Suppose we did not want it, we wanted the original, we would have had to create a copy and then handle that. But in this case, that was not the requirement, so we have just gone ahead and done it. Similarly, now we want descending. What was the name of the function? Sort descending. So I can now say function sort descending. What does it do? It will do names dot sort, and it will say use a function sort descending, sort names descending. And once we have sorted it, we need to display the names. Now let's define this function. So function sort names descending. It will take two names as parameter, and this is descending. So what should we do? We should do return -1 into name1 dot locale compare name2, because we want it in descending order. Now let's go ahead and test it. So this was my original show names. This is ascending. We can see this is right. If I click on descending, I get Tim's TSMJEA. If I keep on clicking on ascending and descending, it shows me in the right one. And hide names is also working perfectly fine. Another important property of the element is class name. Class name is used to get and set the value of the class attribute of the specified element. So whenever we are using CSS or styles, whenever we want to set the class, we will use the property class name. It returns a string representing the class or space separated classes. Let's see how do we use it with an example. So here we have some HTML code where we have displayed some information about a person, the name, email and the mobile, and we have used certain class names here for the styling. In our script, we want to find out these class names and print them on the console. So how can we do it? Let's start with name. So I can say let element is equal to document dot get element by id, and what is the name of the id? It is name. Once we have gotten the element, we can just go ahead and get the class name like element dot class name. Now if I run this code, I get show blue, which is the class name here. So in my CSS, we have defined a couple of classes, show blue and show green. So if I make this say show green for name and now run it, I get show green, which is the class name. We can also get the class name for each of these and print it also. So that is also something we could have done in a very similar fashion. Next, we have this button that we have set, which is change name style. So what I want to do when I click on this button is change it from show blue to show green. So how can I do that? Let me define the function change name style. So I've gotten the element by name. Now I can say element dot class name is equal to show green. And once I've done it, now let me run it. If I do change name style, you can see that the style for seller Jack Smith has changed to show green. We can also check it in the elements. Now if I go to the element, so let me just refresh it. Initially I can see for the seller the class is show blue. If I click on change name style, we can see that the class has changed to show green. Then let's implement this button all green. It's saying let's make the style for each of the these three H3s as show green. So how could we do that? I can say function all green, or let's call it function change style all. We have three IDs here, so let me create an array. Const IDs is equal to name, email and mobile. Now these IDs are there, so I can actually make this array outside it. Let me make it outside the function. In the function, I can just put a for loop for let I is equal to 0, I less than IDs dot length, I plus plus. And I can just get each element by the ID. And the element class name can be set to show green. Let's save it and run it. Now if I click on all green, all these three styles have become green. So we have implemented, we have changed the styles. Then there is this button clear style. Suppose we don't want any style, which means I want a no class here. So how could we have implemented that? Let's see. So we need to implement the function clear styles. Function clear styles. It is exactly similar to this function, so I'll just copy it. And here instead of show green, I can say put it to be an empty string, which means then there is no class that I have specified. If I now run it, and let's look at the elements. Now if I do a clear style, you can see there is no style here. If I make it all green, it has become all green. If I clear styles, again all the styles have been cleared. So this is a way we can use the class name get and set the class name. It's a very important property used heavily in styling the HTML or the DOM. Let us look at some exercises. Given the names and marks of students in maths and computers, the first part says show the data in a table. So here we have an array of students where each student is a JSON with the fields name, maths and computers. And what we want to do is that when this button show students is clicked, the details of the students are shown in a tabular format. So how do we do that? So let's start. So I need to define this function show students, and each student would be a row in the table. So let us use map on this array students to create each row of the table. So I can say students dot map function le. So we need to create a row of the table. So I can say let str is equal to tr, which is the start of the row, td plus le dot name plus slash td. Similarly, we will add the other fields. So let me just copy them. Then we add le dot maths and le dot computers. And finally, we will close the row. So this would create an array with the each row data in it. So let's call it ARR1. So I can make it const also. So let's make it const. Once we have created this array, what is the next thing we need to do? The next thing we need to do is we need to create its header. So let's create the header. So let header is equal to, again there is a row. It starts with header plus equal to, we'll use the header plus name slash th. Similarly with name, we will do maths and we will do computers. Once we have formed the header, and we will close the row. So exactly in the same way we have formed the header. Once we have formed the header, let's form the HTML. So I can say let HTML is equal to table, and within the table then I need to add the header plus then we'll add the student data, which is arr1 dot join with no separator, and we will close the table. So now we have generated the string for the HTML for the table. Now where do we need to attach it? In this div id students, we will put the inner HTML. So let's do it. So let element equal to document dot get element by id, and what was the id? Students. And we can say element dot inner HTML is equal to HTML. Let's also before that just do a console.log so that we can check whether the HTML is fine. Now that I have saved it, let's go ahead, refresh it and run it. And we can see there is some problem this is showing. So students.map. Now what is the problem? Why did it not show anything about the students? Because we forgot a return here. So return str. We could see it here. So it's a good idea to always do a console.log. Let me refresh it and run. And now we have gotten a table. Let's now style this a little bit. So here in my CSS, we have defined a style table1, a class table1, which will give us a border, a class for the cell and a class for the header. Let's apply these three classes. So how would we do that? So in my row, I can say class equal to td1, and let me apply it to all of them. Similarly, in my header, I need to apply my class, and the class for my header was th1. So let me apply that. And my class for the table was table1. So let me apply that too. Now let me run it. So we can see from the console.log that we have applied the styles to the headers, to the rows, and now this is looking as a much better table that we have formed. So given the data, we have been able to create a table and show it. Let's look at the next part of the exercise. Highlight marks greater than equal to 75 and those less than equal to 50. Highlight the students with total greater than equal to 150 or less than equal to 100, and clear the highlights in B and C. So we will make 3 buttons which will give us these functionalities, and clicking on them will do what these things are stated. So as described in the problem, we have these 3 buttons: highlight marks, highlight students and clear. And we need to implement them to highlight those relevant things. So let's start with highlighting of marks. So we need to define this function high marks. So let me say function high marks. Now what should this function do? We are showing students here that we in this function show students that we created earlier, and here we have the marks in maths and marks in computers being displayed. So we would want these class names to be now related to the marks here. So one way to do that is that I either write this code again in high marks and create another show function. Now that is duplication of code. I can also start putting in parameters here. So I can say, let's say we define a variable highlight marks and make it true. So I'm highlighting marks, I have made it true, and at the top I have defined this variable highlight marks and initially it is false. So whenever high marks is clicked, highlight marks becomes true, and I use that variable while I am defining the class names or defining this HTML. So here I could write it. Now there would be a lot of if conditions coming in. So what I can do is I can take these class names and generate them outside and then just concatenate it like this. So I can say plus get class marks for le.maths and put it here. Similarly, for computers, I can do the same thing. So instead of putting the class name, I just put that value here from that functions, and here the parameter will be. Now if I can get the right class names, this should work for me. So I need to now define a function get class marks. It takes the marks and it will return the classes as a string. So now we can say if marks is greater than equal to 75, what should we return? We should return td1 comma. What we have also done, we have defined those styles, that those classes that we need to apply. So for 75 we will apply score 75, and for scores less than equal to 50 we will use score 50. So score 75. Else if marks less than equal to 50, then what should I return? I should return score 50. Else if none of these two condition is, then I should just return what we were doing earlier, which is return td1. Now get class marks will return those classes, those appropriate classes, and they should get here. So now when high marks is called, I have set highlight marks is equal to true, and I should just call show students again, so that the students are displayed again. Now this should work. Let's try it out. Now in the show students, it is showing it with all these fields. Now what is the problem? Because we did not check, we should say here if marks greater than 75 and highlight marks, and we want to highlight marks, then return this. Else if marks and highlight marks, then we should return this. Otherwise we should always return td1. Let's test it now. So show students is exactly like we were getting it earlier. Now if I click on highlight marks, I can see 82, 88, 91, 89 getting highlighted, and the marks below 50 getting highlighted. So this is exactly what we were looking for. Now what's the next part? The next part is to highlight the students with total greater than 100 or less than, greater than 150 or less than 100. And what's the function? Function high students. So let us define this function now. Function high students. So just like we defined highlight marks, let's define highlight students is equal to true. And when I am highlighting the students, I don't want to highlight the marks, so I'll just make highlight marks is equal to false, and again call show students. And similarly, when the marks are being highlighted, I will just make highlight students as false. And let's declare that variable. So I would have let highlight students, and it is initially false. Now in my CSS, I have total 150 and total 100. These are the styles we want to apply for greater than equal to 150 and less than equal to 100. Now where should these styles be applied? These styles will be applied on the row. So that is where these styles will be applied. So I can say here class is equal to exactly the same thing that we did earlier. So we need to get class student, and we will pass the student details element, and we should now define it. So just like we defined get class marks, let's define get class student, and we have the student object st. Now once we have the student object st, we can say if st dot match, or let's define let total is equal to st dot maths plus st dot computers. We can say if total greater than equal to 150 and we are wanting to highlight students, then what should we return? We should return, what was the name of the style? Total 150. Else if, what should be the condition? Total less than equal to 100 and highlight students. What should we return? We should return total 100. Else return an empty string, because otherwise we are not applying any style here. Let's save it and try it. So show students is working fine. Now if I click on highlight students, we can see that that student Bob has been highlighted. Bob's sum is 170, perfect. Jack is 99, it's highlighted with the other one. Mary is greater than 150. Dave is 149, so not highlighted. Similarly, Julia is 118, not highlighted. And Steve is 89, highlighted. If I click on highlight marks, we can see highlight marks is working fine. It's just highlighting those marks. If I click on highlight students again, it is showing the highlight students. If I click on show students is not doing anything and it is not clearing it. Now why is that happening? Because once these values are set, it is there. So let us now define the clear function. So clear styles. Now clear styles should clear both these things. So we can just say highlight students is also false and highlight marks is also false. Now if I run it, highlight, and if I clear it, it has gotten cleared. We could have also said that we don't need a clear styles. We could have implemented a clear styles in our show students also. So we could have said, we could have made a function show students table. Let's call it show students table. And because we are using it, let's make that change. And now we would need to define this function show students. So we, instead of clear styles, we call it say show students, and we don't need really clear styles anymore. Why don't we need it? Because now whenever I'm calling show students, whenever I'm clicking on show students, I'm clearing all these, both these boolean flags. So this is also working perfectly fine for me. The next part of this exercise says sort the table on the field clicked in the header. So here we have these fields, these headers, name, maths and computers. When we click on them, we want the table to be sorted by that field or that column, and let's say in ascending order. So basically we are saying that on the header here, we want to put a click event, and on that click event sort it. So let's put an event here. So I can say on, or let's put it after the class, on click is equal to sort, and let's say we give it the parameter, let's say 0. This is the 0th column, so we can use that name. We could have also said name, maths and computers. In this case we can do 0, so I am doing that. So sort 0. Similarly, in the others we can also define an on click event. In this, let's pass the parameter 1, and for the computers let's pass the parameter 2, because that is the column number 2. Now when it's clicked, so we need to define this function sort. So let's go ahead and define this function sort. So function sort, and it takes the index, or let's call it the column number. It takes the column number. Now if column number is equal to 0, that means I need to sort on name. So what would we do? If column number is 0, names, no sorry, it is students dot sort, and what's the function we need to define? Let's say sort name, and similarly else if column number is equal to 1, students dot sort, and let's say we'll sort by maths. That's the name of the function we want to give. And else if, or we don't need an if, we can just say students dot sort computers. So and once we have sorted it, what should we do? We should just call show students table. So let us now define these sort functions. Function sort name, what will it take? It will take 2 parameters, so st1 comma st2, and we can say return st1 dot name dot locale compare st2 dot name. So it will get those 2 students as parameters. Similarly, let's define the function sort maths st1 comma st2, and what should it return? It will return st1 dot maths minus st2 dot maths. So this should give us a for sorting in the ascending order, and similarly for computers. So let me just copy it and change the maths to computers. So st1 dot computers minus st2 dot computers. So we've defined the 3 sort functions. Let us save it and let me refresh it. So show students. Now when I clicked on name, you can see it's alphabetically dictionary wise sorted. If I click on maths, the same thing is getting applied. If I click on computers, it is now sorted by computers. Let's do the highlight, and now if I click on it, again the same thing is happening. We can very well see it, and So in this we have not ignored the highlighting, we have kept the highlighting, and within that the sorting is happening as I click on the headers. Let's look at the final part of this exercise. Add a remove button in each row. Clicking on that button removes the student. So now what do we want to do? We want there should be another column here in which there are these remove buttons, and when we click on that remove button, that student is removed from this data. So first, what are the steps we need to do? First, we need to add the remove button. Second, when that remove button is clicked, we should be able to get that click and remove that student from the array using splice, and then display the students again. So the first thing, let's add the remove button. So we need another column. So let's start with the map. So in the map, we can just come in and add str plus equal to, let's say, td, and in the td we have a button, and button on click is equal to remove, and we will give the name of the student. So let's say, what is the name of the student? It is le.name. So remove le.name. So this is the end of the button. I will add remove slash button slash td. So this should add the button. Let's test it. Line 29, there is an error. Let's just look at it. Button on click, we added remove. Okay, le.name plus, it should have been yeah. Let's test it. So we have gotten the remove here, and if we can look at it, remove is calling on click remove Dave, on click remove Mary, which is exactly what we wanted. We now need to add it to the header. So similarly on the headers, let's add header is equal to so in the header we have added another, this should have been a th, this should, let's refresh it. We have done some problem somewhere. Let's just test it. It should have been header plus equal to, let's refresh. So we have added the remove button. Let's just, we have defined a style remove button here. Let's just apply that style so that it looks better. So we can say remove button class is equal to, let's see if it looks better. So it's slightly better. So now once we have done this, we now need to implement this function. What is the name of the function? Remove. So let's implement remove. Let's put somewhere. Function remove. It takes the name of the student. So now how do we remove it? We can just do a splice. So find the index and do a splice. So we can say let index is equal to students dot find index. Now what should we say? Function st return st dot name is equal to name. and we can now remove it from students. So students dot splice index, and we want to remove one element. Now that we have removed it, we can just show the students table again. So I can just say show students table. So this should show the students table again, and that should be on the new students array, the modified students array. Let's check it. So we have show students. Now if I click on remove Julia, I get an error. So let's first close this console.log so that I can get more messages. Let's refresh. Show students, remove. There is a problem, unexpected end of input at HTML1. Let's say we do a console.log remove comma name. We should test it whether it's coming here. So it is not coming here, so that means there is an error somewhere in the function definition when the function is being called. So we added this button on click, remove. So typically this should have given us a problem. So we should have said added a double quote here because there was a quote already there. Let's now test it. So now this is working fine. Let me put that console.log to explain the reason why that happened. So console.log str. So earlier what we had put a single quote here. So remove had a single quote for that function, but Bob also had a single quote, so that was creating a confusion. Within this quotes, if we want to pass a string, we should use a double quote, which is what I did, and this is now working fine. So let me test it. I will remove this log. So show students. Now if I remove Julia, Julia is removed. If I highlight marks, marks are highlighted, and I remove Jack, Jack is removed. The sorting is also working fine, and I can now go ahead and remove Steve. Whoever we want to remove, we can remove. If I click on show students, it's showing that properly. So now we have been able to also implement a remove along with this functionality.